we're going to start the project for lesson 2. So if you haven't looked through it, pause this video and go take a look through that and decide on what topic you want to do, maybe do some brainstorming, and then you can actually progress with your own project over the course of this tutorial. So I'm going to begin by setting up to the parameters outlined in the project. So go to File, choose New, or Command N, and set your measurement to inches. We're going to do 7 inches wide by 5 inches tall. This is for print, so it will be 300 pixels per inch, and CMYK color, because again, for print. And click OK. So we've gone over how to type a word or to type a paragraph, but what about arranging words more like a word cloud? So first off, once you have your topic, you need to decide what you want to be seen first. Now, this is what we're going to work towards. The statement or the main theme needs to be the very first thing somebody sees when they look at it. And that's how you can make sure that your viewer is reading the thing that you want them to read first, is by manipulating it so that it's attention grabbing, and we're going to talk exactly how to do that. So in this example, we've got creative being the largest word on here. It's also towards the upper left, and when things are in the upper left, we tend to look at those first, especially if you're Western culture, because we're raised to read from starting at the top left, going to the right, and then working our way down. So I would begin reading creative, artist, educator, daughter, sister, friend, me. So yes, this is an I am theme one. This is about me, because those were the things I could think of off the top of my head to do this word cloud with the easiest. So that's what we're going to work towards. Now, I like to not even worry about color at this point. I like to start with a blank canvas and black type. So to get black, you can either set it from the color window like we just showed you, or if you push the letter D as in David, you'll notice that your little color chips down here turn to black. This is Photoshop's default black. I'm going to type the first word by just clicking once, and creative. To end, push enter, command return. In my example, I wanted everything to be caps, so instead of putting caps lock on, I'm going to use my all caps button, and that way it will be easy to go back if I change my mind. So I have a font I'm going to start with. Now I could change the size of this font to get it exactly the way I want, but it might take me honestly a little bit of time to mess around with these points to figure out exactly what size. Photoshop's a really visual program, so there's usually a way around just entering in a number. What we have is called transform. Now, you can use it from the menu. It is under Edit, and it's called Free Transform. This is one of the few things I think you really should learn the hotkey for, and it's Command T, or the shortcut. When your transform comes up, it will have a line around the outline and then these little nodes on the end. Now here's something I want you to always do. If you click and begin dragging, you'll notice that it distorts the word. With type, you should never distort, stretch, squish. It is one of those things that somebody that works with type a lot can pick out in an instant, and it might make your viewer uncomfortable even if they're not really sure what it is they're looking at. So hold Shift down and you'll notice that will snap it right back to where it should be. Shift is sort of the universal constrain proportion key, or even just constrain in Photoshop. So I'm going to hold down Shift and size this about to where I want, and then just like with type, we need to finish transforming or it won't let us do anything else. So push enter or command return. Once I have my first word, I can get the font set up just exactly how I want it. Now, I'm just going to grab something quickly to use, and we can work on exact things later. So now I want to make a copy of just this so that I don't actually have to go find my font and my size and everything all over again. So one way to make a copy of a layer is to click it in your Layers panel and drag it down to what is known as the New Layer icon, which is right next to the trash and let go. And now I have a copy. To move something around on your canvas, you need to use your Move tool, which is the top one in your toolbar. You can also grab that by hitting the letter V as in Victor. So now I'll drag that around. And I want this to be a different size. Now here's why. If I pull that image back up, let's talk about this for just a second. The reason that we look at this word first is it has the most contrast of anything else on the page. So we look at this first because it's largest. We look at it first because it is darker than everything around it. We look at it first because it is different than everything around it. Now all those words, darkest, difference, bigger, they mean that there is contrast between this item and everything else. So contrast just means difference, and the bigger the contrast, the bigger the difference. Vice versa, the more different something is, the bigger the contrast. And when we make differences like that, then you can really control where your viewer is looking first. So we read left to right, top to bottom, so that's why we would do this. This is the area of emphasis, and this is the direction we're going to look. So when you're arranging your type, you want to say, okay, I'm going to make this the first thing that people look at, and everything else is going to be smaller and less noticeable. So to transform, try using that shortcut. It's Command T, and then hold Shift, and just grab one of those top corners and move it down. Now while you're in transform, you can actually move it around right then. You don't even have to grab your separate move tool. And when you've got it where you want it, push enter and then change the word. So what I just did is I grabbed the type tool by using the shortcut, and I'm going to do that on accident a lot and forget to go over to the toolbar and get the tool because I so habitually use shortcuts, but I will try and catch myself. So go to the toolbar and grab your type tool, and then double click, which will highlight the word, and you can then type the new one and push enter to finalize it. Grab your move tool again. I want to show you a couple more little things. When you have your move tool, whatever layer you're on, you can actually nudge it around the canvas. So let's say I've got this almost where I want it, but I just want it just a tiny bit to the right, but not any further up and down. What I can do is grab my move tool and then just use my arrow keys. Using an arrow key will nudge it over just a couple of pixels. If I want it to go a lot further over, I can hold Shift down and it will do it faster. So just so you know, there's that nifty little nudge option, and that's really nice when you're working with type because sometimes you want stuff to line up really particularly and exactly. So this would be our first step in laying out the words that we're going to use for word cloud. Now, just so that this tutorial doesn't take forever, I actually have this created at several different stages. So I've gone through and I've made my copies and everything is sized the way I want it. If you look over in my layers panel, you can actually see I've got quite a few layers. Believe me, by the time we're done, you're going to have quite a few more. So the next thing you do after you establish what is going to be the main emphasis is you put down, think of it as the next layer that they are going to look at. So it's the second thing they look at. This is a dominant element. The one we're going to put down is called a subdominant, so it's the next thing. And what I decided to use is, excuse me while I grab my layers here real quick, is this fun font. And this is a font you are definitely not going to have because it's one I found on the internet and downloaded. It has got a lot of difference between it and Creative over here. This is a solid black word, this one's just outlines, so I can, with both size and characteristics, create contrast between it and my main word. So you might want to know how you can find a really cool font. I'm going to move a couple of these around, and then I will show you what you can do. You can go find it. So what I'm going to do is copy my new word by clicking and dragging it down to the new icon. We'll do that a couple more times to get used to that. And I have my move tool, which is how I'm moving this around. Then grab your text tool, double click on it, and go with your next word, chocolat. Enter. Copy that again, move it around. Now you'll notice I'm not putting these a ton by each other. When I make these, I like to spread things around kind of equally as I do this. You can certainly do it another way. These are things that I like. Okay, so we've done this duplicate over here a couple times. Another thing you can do with type tools, or with type, is when you have your move tool selected, if you hold down Option, you'll notice that your little key turns into a double arrow, and that just indicates that if you click and drag something, it will duplicate. Now, I'm not just throwing all of these at you to confuse the heck out of you, but these are a couple of really useful shortcuts for doing something like a word cloud. Alright, so we've got those. Let's go find you a font. Now, on our website, I actually have a pretty useful page that's got some resources for type. So if you go to the Resources tab, and there should be one in here called Typography and Fonts, and in here there's going to be a list of places that you can go get fun free fonts to use. So just be aware, not all fonts out there are equal, and not all of them are free, but there are some really good ones. I'm going to show you my favorite website, which is dafont.com. I like this one because it is organized pretty well, so I can click on any of these little bits up here and see a font. You can actually type a word up here and see it previewed. Type it in, hit enter. So then I can go down and say, alright, well, I really like the way this top font looks. I'm going to download it and send it somewhere I can find it really easy, and click save. Alright, now I am going to pop over to a window so I can look at my desktop. Here is the font I just downloaded. It's in a zipped file. To open those on a Mac, all you have to do is double click. So now I have the folder, and inside it, it's got some selling and license information. If I hit spacebar, I can see it. The usually have more information than that, but it might say things about who made it and whether you can use it for profit or not. But this file, the TTF one, is the font, and to install that on a Mac, the easiest thing to do is double click it, and that will pull it up here, and you can say install font. You might show something like this. It's just saying please review the problems. You can look over whatever they are. If you're okay with everything, just check it and say install. Now it's opened up Font Book, it's installed, so it's called Olympic Branding. I'm going to come back to my Photoshop, I'm on Art Supplies, and I'm going to come up here and start typing Olympic Branding. Now if you're in CS6, you actually have to just type the whole thing. If you're in one of the newer ones, it will start pulling up a list that is everything similar to what you're typing, which is great. Okay, so really we've gone over the basics for laying out horizontal type. Let's take a look at laying out vertical type. So I'm on my one piece of type. I'm going to transform, so Command T. And this time, instead of making it much bigger or smaller, I'm going to rotate. If you hover your cursor over one of the corners, you'll notice that it changes shape to a little bent arrow. That means if you click and drag, it will actually spin around. Now if we want it to go perfectly vertical, we want to constrain it to vertical. So hold Shift and it will pop it straight up, and you can let go and hit enter. How cool is that? Grab your move tool and move it around. So this is just going to become a pattern of create type, transform it, move it around. Create type, transform it, move it around.